The city of Seattle has decided not to extend their local eviction moratorium, and states outside of New York are pushing for just cause eviction protections. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have a couple of interesting articles for you today, and man, all of the eviction protections and everything that have been pushed lately, I'm actually surprised to say that up in Seattle, they've decided not to extend their local eviction moratorium. And they're considered one of the most left-leaning, far left progressive places, very anti-landlord, very pro-tenant. And, it shocked me when there was just no appetite to keep extending it, And so I don't know exactly what happened. Maybe it'll explain more in the article. But, for now, the local eviction moratorium is over. But here's the bad part. There are still so many eviction protections for tenants out there that landlords still have an extremely difficult time getting those bad tenants who are not paying rent out of their units. Now, the second story I have is coming out of Maryland, right? And as I said before, when I was talking about just cause eviction, where landlords can only evict tenants for a few small, certain little reasons, right? These are long-term eviction protections that essentially act as an eviction moratorium, but that's put in place permanently, right? Now, they've been pushing for this up in New York, but now there's a state outside of New York, another state outside of New York, which is looking at, possibly implementing it there, okay? So, like I said, this stuff spreads. That's why we have to fight it now before it gets to the point where we can't stop it and we're just stuck under these ridiculous systems, okay? Now, before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below, and let me know what you think of the situation going on in Seattle. Were you surprised when you saw that the Seattle City Council didn't extend their local eviction moratorium? I know I was. Come on here, now they still have other rules in place. I believe I read an article that said that they cannot evict students or the families of students or teachers within the school year. So it's obviously still in the middle of the school year right now. And I also read an article saying that I think it was winter evictions were banned as well. So yeah, there's a lot of tenant protections right now that are still keeping landlords from getting these people out of their property. So maybe that's why they figured, hey, we don't actually need exact eviction moratorium because we have all these other tenant protections. I don't know, but let's get into this article and figure out what their thinking is. So this article is coming from comonews.com, and it says, Seattle City Council votes to block open-ended extension of eviction moratorium. Yeah, let's get into it. The Seattle City Council voted Tuesday against extending an eviction moratorium that was put in place by former Mayor Jenny Durkin and set to expire by the end of this month. The proposal had been introduced and championed by City Councilwoman Kshama Sawant, who brought the legislation forward after Mayor Bruce Harrell announced earlier this month that he would extend the eviction moratorium 2 more weeks, but allow it to expire on February 28th. Sawant's measure would have allowed the eviction moratorium to stay in place as long as the city's COVID emergency order remained active. But the council voted 5-3 against the proposal, with only Sawant, Lisa Herbold, and Teresa Moscato voting in favor of it. So yeah, this councilwoman Sawant, now I remember reading a while back that I believe they had like a recall election on her, but she actually survived this recall. I think this is the same one, and she's known for putting out extremely far left-leaning legislation. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me that she wanted an open-ended, basically never be able to evict anyone eviction moratorium. Okay. With COVID cases steadily declining, the time has come for the city to move on from the broad approach of the eviction moratoria and instead drive more deliberate and focused efforts to support those most in need, Mayor Harrell said nearly 2 weeks ago. In addition to the distribution of all available emergency rental assistance, truly vulnerable tenants, those still suffering significant pandemic-related financial hardships, will continue to have enhanced protections, while at the same time, small landlords have needed clarity as they evaluate how to move forward. Oh, yeah. Small landlords have needed clarity, but they didn't say nothing about small landlords having needed money, okay? Oh, well, here's the clarity for you small landlords. Give me the money. Give me the money that this tenant owes me. So, I'm not a homeless shelter here, okay? How many times do I have to say that? Small landlords are not affordable housing providers, for the super poor, and not homeless shelters. Okay, we are businesses and we need to make money. That is why we got into this in the first place. Okay. Okay, so let me skip down a little bit. I'm trying to figure out if they have any more information about, I mean, I guess what the mayor said there was pretty much, what their thinking was, or their logic for this city council. Basically, that they have enough eviction protections already in place. They don't need an extension of this eviction moratorium going any further forward. So, yeah, it's over up in Seattle, at least. Now, like I said, there's still local eviction moratorium going on, I believe, in Los Angeles County, which is the, population-wise, the largest county in the entire country. So, yeah, that's another ridiculous thing right there. But anyway, let's go on to my second story, and it's coming out of WJLA.com, and it's about the just cause eviction thing. So as I've said many times before, I am 100% opposed to this just cause eviction thing, because it is like a permanent eviction moratorium, and the way that New York has it set up, it acts as rent control on top of that. Okay, now I don't know what they're talking about here in Maryland, but this is nuts that something is already extending to places outside of, where it started. Okay, so, it says, as more Marylanders receive eviction notices, activists push for change, including HB 881. And I think that's the bill for the just cause eviction law that they're trying to pass. So let's get into this article. Last month, a Montgomery County mother of two received an eviction notice. I was so scared, I was like trembling, the unidentified mother said. She's scheduled to be evicted in March, in the middle of her son's school year. The loophole is known as tenant holding over. What we've also seen is the near doubling statewide of tenant holding over cases, said Executive Director Matt Losak. It means that any lease that's coming due, the landlord need only give 60 days notice towards the end of the lease, but that they are not going to renew the lease. A single mom was recently evicted under similar circumstances. So yeah, they call that tenant holding over, right? And then they say, oh, well, this is an eviction. No, that's just not me renewing a contract. That's not an eviction, okay? In my opinion, okay? Now, that's what their state law says, but there's nothing that says, well, at the end of your lease, I have to, fill out a new lease for you and you get to stay no matter what, okay? You signed a 1-year contract or however long your lease contract that you signed, right? And anytime after that, there's no contractual obligation to force me to keep you as a tenant in my property. At least that is my opinion of it. Now, what these just cause eviction laws do is they make it so unless tenant meets certain little causes, then you have to sign a new lease with that tenant. You have to allow that tenant to stay. Okay, and then on top of that, they will say, well, if you try to increase the rent over a certain amount so that you can try to force that tenant out, well, you can't do that. Okay, you can't. If you try to increase the rent too much, then that's considered you trying to force that tenant to be evicted, and that doesn't count. So what that does is it kind of puts in place a de facto rent control, okay, so that you can't raise your rents above that percentage, whatever they decide that percentage is going to be. So yeah, this really screws over landlords, and that's why these activists and why these tenants are pushing for it. But they never ask, well, they never ask this tenant, they never ask the landlords, why do you want to end the person's lease at the end of the term? Okay, that's never a question. They never ask, hey, what about contract law? Maybe, if somebody fills out a contract saying they're going to perform a service for a certain period of time, why are we trying to force them to perform a service for longer than that period of time? They never question those things, okay? And that's what my issue is with this just cause eviction thing. But let's keep going. Because I did not make the income that competes with the current market value, Norma Patricia said. CASA community organizer Alex Vasquez says Patricia's unit was offered to another renter shortly after, and she noticed that the unit went up for double the amount of money that she was paying, Vasquez said. House Bill 881 is working to make changes so tenants have more rights. So, yeah, it sounds like the tenant's story is that the rent went up, okay? And she couldn't pay that new higher rent. And she probably didn't even qualify for it. So, landlord just said, hey, you can stay here until the end of your lease. You agreed to pay, let's say, $500 a month for this 1 year. But now, going into the next year, rents for the whole building are going up. And you told me you can't pay that new higher rent. Well, I'm not going to keep you in here at that lower rent. So you've just got to go. I'm just not going to renew your lease. It doesn't matter if you paid on time every month for your entire lease. If you can't afford the new rent, you can't afford it. So it's time that you move on. The fact that it's the middle of the school year or whatever doesn't matter. Now, if if I was you, I would be out there looking for a new place to live right now instead of talking to the newspaper, because simply put, as of right now, this just cause eviction thing hasn't taken place yet, and hopefully it never does. Hopefully landlords fight back against it. So yeah, like I said, this is bad news. This just cause eviction thing could easily spread to places far beyond the East Coast or the West Coast, and end up you're in the Midwest. Go down to Oklahoma City or something, and you're like, why is there all these eviction protections and all these tenant protections? Because that's what the very anti-landlord, pro-tenant people are pushing for right now.